Davison. Peter Davison. The Fifth Doctor, played by Peter Davison. Ah, damn it!
We're in the 80s.
Welcome back to another episode of That Light is Too Damn Bright, and I still can't get the Doctor's name right. Today is a rarity in this particular review series, because I'm covering one of the few classic Doctor Who serials that I've already seen way back in the day around 2010-ish. Because of that, I chose to watch the Blu-ray since my DVD copy's at least gotten one use. It is approximately 0 degrees and I'm incredibly tired from working so much recently, but hey, I am ready to get this done. So, To Doomsday is a 4-part story from January 1982 and is the second serial of Season 19, which I mistakenly called Season 9 last week, and I didn't realise till I had already uploaded it. Whoops. Despite being the second story to feature the Fifth Doctor, this was the first one that Peter Davison filmed. Literally all I can remember from my first time watching it were the green alien dudes that looked like Shrek, and one line of dialogue that made me go, well, that was dumb. And then I've just forever associated this in the back of my mind as being one of the few bad serials I watched back when I first became a Whovian. And yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I don't know how, but somehow when I very first got into Doctor Who back in 2009 and 10, all the classic stories that I watched at random just so happened to be like the best ones. Sure, every now and then there'd be a dud, but for the most part, I just so happened to watch ones that I genuinely enjoyed, and mostly still enjoyed to this day. We'll see when we get to Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, but yeah, for one reason or another, this was not one of them. This stood out to me as a dumb one. Yeah, I distinctly remember sitting down and watching this one with both my parents back in the day, which was unusual because, sure, I would watch old school Doctor Who with my dad all the time because, you know, he grew up with the series, and so if I chucked the DVD on, he'd join me. But my mother was always, you know, more the modern series, you know, David Tennant, Matt Smith sort of thing. We would all sit down as a family together and watch the modern series. It got to the point where they kept up with it when I fell off of it, which is quite funny. But yeah, I definitely remember sitting down with both my mother and father in the lounge watching this one. Funny the random stuff you remember, isn't it? Anyway, after not thinking much of last week's Castrovalva, I was kind of dreading this review, because I thought, oh no, it's my first time being back in ages and I'm doing 2 negative reviews in a row. Well, colour me surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. I was surprised. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. That one line of dialogue I thought was so bothersome back then. Yeah, it's a bit dumb, but, you know, didn't really bother me this time. Just goes to show you can watch the same thing at 2 different points in your life and have wildly different reactions. What a groundbreaking concept, I know. Maybe one day I'll actually like Series 8. Right, first thing that stood out to me were the sets. The set design. I love this. The aesthetic. Just, look at this atmosphere. It's been a long time since I've praised a serial for great use of unique camera angles, and this story's full of them. Absolutely fantastic cinematography direction. Although, to be fair, the budget clearly allowed for these full-scale, fantastic sets to be constructed, meaning they could actually go for these captivating shots. So I don't necessarily hold it against other serials working on a tighter budget with more limited sets. Now, saying that, though, it then makes me wonder what excuse those other unnamed serials have for being so boring. Well, it just makes this one stand out more. I was initially surprised to see the Blu-ray didn't offer any updated special effects or anything. But then I started watching, and honestly, it doesn't need them. Everything just looks so good on camera already. And I mean, sure, the slightly blurry face superimposed over another face is a bit dodge. The space walking sequence actually holds up remarkably well, in my opinion. Story and plot-wise, you got the Fifth Doctor, who's thankfully over his regeneration sickness. Still dressed in his cricket whites with a stick of celery. Just learn to love it. You got Tegan, who's finally acknowledging her auntie's grisly demise a whole 2 serials ago. Nissa is clearly getting more at home in the TARDIS, proving to be both capable and inquisitive, like a less uppity Romana. And then there's Adric.
That's the trouble with women. Mindless, impatient, and bossy.
Oh! So that's why people hate Adric so much. Who wrote this? Honestly, I could often tell that there might just be a little bit of a cringy, immature side to him that would, you know, show itself from time to time. But yeah, this was when it was the most blatant. Yikes! Slight unscripted negative ramble coming up. I don't think this serial needed the whole, gender war, girls versus boys, immaturity. I mean, sure, it's commonplace on the playgrounds, but for To Doomsday, could have done without it. Didn't benefit anything. It doesn't add any likability to the characters, just takes away from them. So, yeah, that was dumb. Well, Adric being a bit of a brat aside, I reckon overall these companions are starting to develop a lot more. It's beginning to get the feeling of a proper TARDIS team, a semi-cohesive unit, as opposed to a few stragglers forced together by circumstance. I did say I was going to talk about the story, didn't I? I guess I could simplify it as a potential invasion of fashionable frogs. For something I'd seen before, I really didn't remember 99.99% of it. I guess my recollection of it being a bit lame did lend itself to impressing me when I found it to be better than I remembered, or rather, didn't remember. But even if I went into it completely blind, I still reckon I'd have a more positive response to it. Because yeah, I still found myself really getting into it. The acting, particularly from Davison, was far more natural, which again, completely baffles me because this was filmed first. But I totally saw him, for the first time, as the Doctor. And I just wanted to emphasize what I mean by that. Last night, after a long day of work, I was in the shower before sitting down to watch this. And in my head, I was going over some of the comments I'd received in my previous video. Great feedback, by the way. I appreciate that, guys. And it dawned on me that for old Bill, Pat, Pertwee, and Baker, right from the get-go, it's like, yeah, that's the Doctor. New face, new persona, but unequivocally the Doctor. But last week in Castrovalva, I just saw some guy. I can't quite put my finger on it or nail it down any further. It's just the feeling I had. But I think it's safe to say that my worries about adjusting to Peter Davison's acting styles are no more. The rest of the plot has solid pacing, at least enough to keep my easily distracted self engaged. I found it all very interesting. The green aliens and their goals, their history, the side characters and the reveal of their true nature. Little moments of genuine acting and great direction that made me go, this could pass for a modern episode at times. And I must emphasize, when I make claims and comparisons like that, which I often do, I don't mean to say that every modern Doctor Who episode is a complete flawless masterpiece that these classics could never hope to live up to. I just mean it in a way where there are certain sensibilities and suspensions in disbelief you take while watching these old campy sci-fi serials. But every so often you get a story, or moments in a story, where I'm like, oh, if this was in 1080p widescreen, I could easily see it fitting in one of those best scenes compilations on YouTube, right alongside one of the modern Doctor's monologues. Hello, Stonehenge! Rings of Akaten monologue for life. Where was I again? Oh yeah, story, plot, frogs. I liked it. I even really liked some parts. I'd go into specifics, but then this would just evolve into one of those reviews where I'm just listing off a bunch of bullet points of things I like. Ha! As if I don't do that anyway with my bullet points of minor observations. Did somebody say the Dirvinator listing off a casual list of observations in no particular order? Such as, Tegan is still running around in high heels this whole time. Bravo to Jeanette Fielding for committing to that. They do the whole Jimmy Neutron, salt, sodium chloride, ha joke that the internet was obsessed with for 5 minutes like a decade ago. The Doctor doesn't understand Indigenous Australian languages, which I thought was odd, because isn't the TARDIS supposed to automatically translate for you? Although I understand that's probably a modern series concept, but still, it did take me by surprise when the Doctor had to turn to somebody else and ask what the Indigenous Australian man said. Those are words I don't think I've ever heard come from the Doctor's mouth. What did he say? To give him the benefit of the doubt, perhaps the Doctor and the TARDIS hadn't visited every part of Australia at every point in time, because Professor Wikipedia states that there could be anywhere between 13 and 363 Indigenous languages in Australia? What? And I know TARDIS lore. The TARDIS has got to land first before it can do its magical thing where it absorbs a language and translates it to the Doctor, because let's be honest, the TARDIS is just magic at this point. It can do whatever the writers need it to do. Although, and this might be a bit of an assumption, to me, the more unbelievable thing would be that Tegan, a middle to upper class white woman in the early 80s, would have any interest in Indigenous culture and be able to fluently communicate with an Indigenous Australian man. Hey, I don't want to assume, and I really don't want to come across as judgmental, so I reached out to the #1 source of Australian culture, aka The only two Aussies I know in real life. And they both confirmed that, yeah, even in modern times, the majority of people just don't care to learn. And that's not necessarily a character flaw or anything of people in real life, you know. People have their interest and their non-interest. It's just another casual Dirvinator observation. What have I done? But hey, I'm just nitpicking at this point. And benefit of the doubt again, perhaps Tegan needed the multi-language training to be a good air hostess. Either way, points for cultural representation in a time where that thing wasn't so commonplace. Even if they're a bit, you know, cliche stereotypy. And hey, more positive points in that direction. They actually got ethnic people to perform and act in this story, as opposed to just another bunch of white British blokes in brownface. Oh no, classic Doctor Who gone woke, classic Doctor Who cancelled cause woke bad, Doctor Who bad, classic Doctor Who woke cancelled bad. Taking the piss out of anti-woke rage betas is one of my favourite things to do. Oh no, that just reminded me. Poor, sweet, delusional Adric really did get fully red-pilled here, didn't he? Starts yabbering on like Kanye West, like, no, this clearly evil guy is actually great. He just wants to do what's best for us. You just don't understand because you're a dumb girl. Oh no, Adric. What do they do to you in these episodes? I want to be on your side, but maybe this is his true self. Yeah, I must concede. I've been cutting Adric a lot of slack since he was introduced into the show. But if this is just a sign of things to come, then yeah, he's in for a bit of a shock. An Earth shock. Ha. Hello, it's me from the future, just jumping in to say a few things. I'm coming at you from the other side of the room this time. So if you've ever wondered what's in the reflection of the TV, it's just chest of drawers, posters, and more nerd memorabilia. In a twisted display of my own hypocrisy, turns out I didn't know enough about Australian Indigenous culture, as I assumed I did. Turns out a term I was using to refer to certain Indigenous populace in Australia actually has negative racial connotations in today's society, which I genuinely had no idea about. And it was kind of shocking, because then I'm going back rewatching all my footage and it's like, am I saying a slur without realizing it? Turns out the politically correct way of referring to people is either Aboriginal person or Torres Strait Islanders, but for the sake of, you know, not offending anyone and doing my best to get it right, I've awkwardly re-edited sentences to just say Indigenous Australians, because I ended up reaching out to a third person I knew who's also from Australia, and they actually told me, like, hey, I studied stuff where they taught us this in high school and university, did a course about like culture and Indigenous populations and stuff, and yeah, they were the one that told me that, like, oh, the term that you just used, not okay today. So I'm eternally grateful to this person for helping me to not look like an absolute fool in this video, thank goodness. That being said, it was fascinating to read how, like, this one particular term is used as a blanket term to encompass hundreds of various tribes and Indigenous populations under just, like, one word, which of course takes away their individuality and everything, and it was just really fascinating to learn. And it does add more context to what Wikipedia said about there being, like, hundreds of different languages and dialects, because there's no one specific thing. And I think that's the main thing I just wanted to point out, that I personally didn't realise, growing up in New Zealand, is that there is no one Indigenous culture or population in Australia. So that was really fascinating to learn. Doesn't necessarily change, you know, what I was saying about, you know, what are the odds that Tegan can speak a certain language sort of thing, because now it's like, yeah, no, there is no one language, but it's, you know, still, again, like I said, points for representation in a time where it wasn't common. And yeah, now I have learnt a lot and genuinely found it fascinating. And I encourage you, I mean, odds are people watching this probably already knew. I'm like, oh yes, this is the one idiot who did not know, but now I know. So, yeah. I think I've said everything I want to say about it. I found it to be a decent time. Certainly better than I remember. Like any story, there's things I enjoy, stuff I didn't care for, like the whole Tegan messing with the TARDIS subplot being entirely unnecessary. But overall, yeah, I liked it. Hello, me again, just adding more minutes to the runtime. Wanted to point out there was almost a missed opportunity in this serial, where, like, there was a line early on where they talked about how, oh, there's like 3 billion life forms on the ship. Well, like, how can they fit that many life forms on the ship? And then later on, they talk about how, like, there's some kind of substance that can shrink your atoms down to a tiny size. So I thought, oh, that's going to be a big reveal. It's like, oh, these evil frog people are secreting some kind of slime that shrinks everything down. But it's like, no, it's just robots. Oh, okay. I mean, it's still a fine reveal, but, you know, I just thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity. And I appreciate how it progressed the TARDIS unit's dynamic. I really hope we see it continue going forward and don't just get the same sort of thing each week. Adric says something dumb, Tegan rightfully complains about wanting to go back to Earth, Nyssa faints. Wait, what? Whoa, what a cliffhanger. I did not see that one coming. I kind of just want to get a move on to see what happens next. I want to make sure Nyssa's alright. So tune in to next week's review while I review Kinder. Kinda? The snake one. I think I'm starting to see why Doctor Who legend Josh Schneers likes Nyssa so much. Because when she collapsed, I sat up like, Nyssa, no! So don't forget to subscribe to the official Josh Schneers YouTube channel. How could anyone possibly forget that?